Hello everyone, it's Marcel here. Today I wanted to speak a bit about the bane of the beta male's existence. Purgatory for the blue pill man. I speak of nothing other than the friend zone. So what is the first thing that comes to mind when someone mentions the friend zone? I could imagine that most people picture a guy clamoring for the attentions of a woman who's not interested in him, at least in a romantic sense. The guy in this circumstance being the one promoting the idea of being in a romantic relationship, and the woman politely saying no, despite his persistence. We can assume that something's been said about the romantic interest because in a situation where a man likes a woman and hasn't said anything, they're stuck as being friends, it's not a friend zone, that's a blue pill guy who needs to grow a set of balls and open his mouth. Everyone respects confidence. All the while, both parties trying to maintain the friendship and not allowing it to fall apart. The psychological loop that occurs from this, as well as the eventual difficulties it can cause, have plagued virtually everyone at some time or another within their lives. Back when I was blue pill, I got particularly frustrated when it came to getting friend-zoned, and it was because most of the women that I was friend-zoned by were partially interested in me, but they wanted to keep me as an option B, keep me in the back pocket in case whatever they were working on currently, which most of the time I never found out until later, was either going to fail or had failed, and I was the fallback. At least, that's what I thought was happening. Now, even when I was younger, I figured if a person truly cared about someone, at least in a romantic or pararomantic sense, that they would give them a genuine chance up front and not string them along like that. But in my ignorance and youth, I had not stopped to truly consider the motivations behind the women I was dealing with, and the concept that they were intentionally putting me in that friend zone because that's where they wanted me, as opposed to having me as an option at all. It'd be like keeping the cow in the farm so that it's easier to milk, if you'll forgive the analogy. Looking back on it, I do believe they were using me for my resources, even if it was just for a shoulder to cry on. And it was most likely going to be years before any of them would consider being in a relationship with me, if at all. The only thing that ever allowed me to succeed in getting anything resembling a relationship in that situation is that I'm a fairly direct and rational person. And if I'm speaking one-on-one to a woman who's even listening, and I explain to them, hey, you put me in a friend zone here, you realize that kind of sucks, let's give this an honest shot, sometimes I got lucky. In hindsight, though, looking at the results of the relationships in the end, all I was really doing was renegotiating the terms of the friend zone. It would be like the cow asking the farmer to wear gloves prior to getting milked. Now, before someone in the comments below tells me that that's not the case and that friend zones are often not the guy or the other person getting used, let's break a couple of things down. Firstly, in modern society, it is extremely easy to get a guy ticketed, arrested, even put in jail for any form of harassment. At least in my country, it sure is. So if a woman isn't interested or doesn't like the attention she's getting from a guy, it's not difficult to make it stop. In fact, it's almost effortless, with situations where guys get accused and convicted of crimes that was not even prompted by the person supposedly having been mistreated, and was only the perception of a bystander who had nothing to do with what happened. Furthermore, in order to be friend-zoned, there had to have been some form of communication of intent to go further than just being friends, which was inevitably shot down. So having said that, we're talking about two people with the presence of mind to realize that the intent was there. Finally, there must be something perpetuating the drive from the pursuing party, typically the guy, to push them forward to continue desiring the relationship. Though occasionally there will be a man stricken with a horrible case of one-itis, it is not likely in those situations, if it were handled maturely and properly, and the man was let down easy, that it would become this manipulative, horribly toxic situation that happens far too often. I was as blue pill as they came, and it was very easy for me to become infatuated with a woman. And all she needed to do was say simply, Marcel, I'm not interested. At that point I was able to move on, because as quick as it was for me to fall for her, it was just as quick to fall for the next. Where things would start to get complicated is when she came up to me the next day and kissed me on the cheek, or put her arm around me, or winked at me, or asked if we could go out and do something together, started wanting to spend time around me. From time to time, taking a moment to pause and remind me that I was only a friend. When I was growing up, friend was a 4-letter F word. I hated that shit. Bringing my thoughts back into perspective. So, essentially, you have two people with the presence of mind to realize there was intent to have a relationship, where the woman is accepting of the guy's interest, is willing to allow it, is still continuing to be his friend, and his feelings are not being properly shot down. The bitterness and frustration on the male's end that occurs is a natural result of getting manipulated. So to tie it all together, if things are being handled reasonably, a friend zone should never even occur, at least in most cases. Guys will often get caught into this cycle because we have a tendency to develop tunnel vision when it comes to what we're doing, relationships, activities. We get really focused, and I don't speak for all men naturally, it's just the way we're wired on average. Women multitask and wield emotional power, whereas men zero in on a particular task and wield physical and motivational power. I've mentioned this in my videos before, but please feel free to tell me down below if you disagree. Without being narrow-minded and ignoring special circumstances, because they do occur, a friend zone is nothing more than a carrot carefully attached to a stick that's tied to a man's back, allowing it to dangle in his face just out of reach so that he'll chase it. He runs faster and harder the whole time, not realizing that the carrot's attached to him the whole time, and that he will likely never catch it. There's a multitude of great advice out there for those stricken with the friend zone on how to get out of it, but ultimately a person either has to change the cycle or stop putting energy into the system. Now I'm going to step in and blow all that other advice out of the water with a simple, straightforward fact. To a blue pill man out there right now in that situation, I would say, if the woman has lied about intending to be friends and is trying to manipulate you or play games, she is not worth your time and you should walk away. If she has been honest about intending to only be friends, then convincing her otherwise would create an unhealthy relationship. She is not worth your time, you should walk away. Then there's the final thought that pops up, well, hey, at least in one of those scenarios I might get laid. Come on, honestly, there's much easier, less drama-filled ways to get laid. Women that will consider that without the emotional attachment behind it will generally be more upfront about it and not play all these emotional games on the side. And if none of that is proof enough to walk away from a friend zone, at the very least, put them on the back burner. Focus on other things, focus on other people, other women, and let them be the one sitting waiting by a phone. Because ultimately, that's the only way to flush out whether or not they're actually interested, or if they're genuinely just trying to vent off your feelings in a way that benefits them. So I hope this was entertaining and possibly informative. I know it's a topic that's been discussed quite a bit, so there is some other information, maybe differing opinions on it out there. If you agree, disagree, think I'm full of shit, please let me know down below. This is a subject that's been on my mind lately, so I figured I would give my spin on it. If you want to hear more on topics like this, please feel free to like and subscribe.